What's up, party people? Fat Gangsta 1911 coming at you live with a high-octane YouTube video. And Sony just sent out a huge announcement a couple days ago, and I actually printed it out for you guys so that we could read it together. So let's see what this says. Oh, that's right, guys. A big f you to its entire customer base. How out of character for Sony. If you don't know what I'm talking about, essentially Sony announced that starting January of 2028, they will no longer be producing any physical video games on disc. And this doesn't just apply to Sony first-party PlayStation games. Companies like Limited Run Games, I Am 8-Bit, and any other independent publishers will not be able to produce any physical PlayStation discs after that point. And it's been talked about to death why physical video games going away is a bad thing. It's bad for consumers, it's bad for collectors, it's bad for video game preservation, and it's a really bad look for Sony. There's just a ton of reasons why this is just an awful thing for console gaming and gaming in general, and I'm going to get into a few of those reasons in a second here. But just to preface, I want to make it clear that if you prefer digital media or you only really play digital games, this is not a video of me shitting on you. I actually understand why someone might prefer digital. It's definitely more convenient, and it's just kind of how a lot of people more casual about video games choose to enjoy them, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, that being said, when you buy a video game digitally on the PlayStation Store, Xbox Store, Nintendo eShop, whatever it may be, when you purchase it digitally, you are not purchasing the actual game. You are essentially purchasing a license to play that game under that specific platform's terms. Whereas when you have a physical game, like Astrobot here, for example, you own this. You will always have this. This disc has the game on it, and most of the time you're able to just download it, pop it into your PlayStation, download it without needing an internet connection or worrying about Sony busting your door down and taking it from you. With digital games, you have no ownership whatsoever of what happens to your game, and if it's stored digitally on your console, Sony or who the ever can just take it away from you whenever they please. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking that, oh, this is just some conspiracy theory type paranoia. Sure, they could take away your digital purchases, but they never actually would. And I hate to burst your bubble, pal, but it's already happening. There's a few examples already of Sony themselves exercising their control over their users' digitally purchased content. Recently, Sony announced that it would be removing 551 movies and TV series from the PlayStation Store on September 1st, 2026 due to licensing issues and shit like that. And that in of itself is not crazy. I mean, movies get taken off of storefronts all the time. But what is crazy is that Sony also confirmed that the movies being deleted from the stores will also be simultaneously deleted from customers' libraries. These were people who bought and paid for specific movies to have them in their PlayStation libraries to watch whenever they like, paid for with their money. But it just so happens to be on their PlayStation library, so if Sony doesn't want you to have it, they can just take that shit back and not give you any of your money back either. Now, obviously, this sucks ass, but, you know, these are movies. At least people have the option to go out to fucking Walmart or whatever and get a physical DVD or Blu-ray so they don't have to worry about this shit. But as far as video games, if you want to avoid anything even remotely similar happening to you in the future once they stop producing these physical discs, sorry, looks like you're out of luck. And I mean, if Sony so easily decides to take away movies that its own customers have bought with their own money, I promise you there's absolutely nothing stopping them from doing this with video games. You cannot make this up. This literally just happened as I was editing this video. I was playing MLB The Show 26, which is a game that I do own digitally on my PS5. I am guilty of that. My internet is being like weird or slow or something's going on with my internet, but I had the game open and it closed itself, and now it says this: can't use this content, can't connect to the server to verify your license. What the does that mean? Gotta love that digital ownership. You don't own the game, you own a license, and if it can't be verified, you can't play it. I don't have to deal with this with any of my physical games. It's just ridiculous, and I think it's crazy that this literally happened right as I was editing this video, so I can get a real life example of it. And it's all just so ironic that Sony is the one kind of spearheading this, or at least the first company ballsy enough to come out and say it. Because literally the last console generation, Sony was the one like dunking on Xbox about the whole no used games thing when Microsoft was dropping the Xbox One. If you don't know, when Microsoft revealed the Xbox One, there were a bunch of features that they were planning on implementing that people were understandably pissed at. The console had to always be online and connected to the internet to work at all, and the Xbox could only take brand new game discs, and once that disc was placed into your Xbox, it would be tied to that specific Xbox and you wouldn't be able to play it elsewhere. And people were rightfully pissed off about this, so much to the point that they ended up walking the feature back. But at the time, Sony was like making these fucking videos making fun of Microsoft, like about sharing games, and they were just acting like, oh, they're the gamer friendly console and we understand that you want to be able to sell your games and do what you want with them.
We believe in the model that people embrace today with PlayStation 3 and continue to demand. Just heard you there. When a gamer buys a PS4 disc, they have the rights to use that copy of the game. They can trade in the game at retail, sell it to another person, lend it to a friend, or keep it forever.
On top of just the irony of it all, this move to digital only will completely kill the secondhand game market. Sure, they said, oh, we're gonna do physical code and box copies, but these codes can only be redeemed once. And all they do is just download the game from the PlayStation Store, so there's no way to resell the game if you already played it. It will all be completely relegated to PlayStation's digital storefront. And with that, there's no competition whatsoever, or any reason for Sony to charge anything other than full price for video games. I'll put up an example on screen, but there's a bunch of examples of video games that are more expensive on the PlayStation Store than a physical version is on like Amazon or something. Also, along with the announcement that they are no longer producing physical discs, Sony announced that they will also be shutting down the PS3 and PS Vita storefronts. So assuming they follow this trend of shutting down their digital stores after 15, 20 so years, which they will, once these games go all digital, there will be no effective way to go back and play these games. These games will exist only available for purchase on the console storefront, and once they decide it's time to take her out back and, you know, take down the store, that's it. You'll never be able to experience it again unless you already got it. And knowing Sony, you know, they'll definitely just be like, oh, you know, we released the remastered version on the PlayStation 9 or whatever the they're on at that point, and you could just buy it on there for $70. Eat a bag of dicks, Sony. You also got some geniuses on TikTok and social media giving their 2 cents, helplessly trying to defend this billion-dollar company and their decision, which, by the way, is a decision to ultimately milk more money out of their customers than they already do. One of the main big talking points I hear from these people on TikTok and Instagram and whatever are, they'll go,
name one time that Sony has ever taken away a digital game from its consumers. You can't, because they never have.
Can anyone name a single instance where they bought a digital game and they didn't quote-unquote own it? Meaning that one day a company, after you purchased this game digitally, later decided, don't want you owning this shit anymore.
Hey numbnuts, the reason why Sony doesn't do that is because these physical versions of games exist. If a bunch of people already own a physical version of a game, it makes no sense for Sony to just delete the game digitally out of people's accounts. But in this all digital ecosystem that we're headed towards, unfortunately, Sony doesn't have to worry about any of that. They can effectively control the entire customer base's access to a game. I like to consider these physical versions almost as insurance for people's ownership of video games, not only physically but digitally. Because these exist, it puts pressure on Sony to keep digital games up. And even if, you know, Sony wants to shut down servers or licenses have expired or whatever, Sony won't remove games digitally as long as a lot of people own the game physically.
Another thing that really sucks about this whole all digital future that we're headed towards is the novelty of physical games is just completely gone. This is a Battlefield 1 Steelbook. This is awesome. I love having, you know, a premium physical thing to have on my shelf to represent the game. This is the Dark Souls trilogy. This is a cardboard sleeve with all 3 of the Dark Souls games with DLC. Yeah, you know, it's a novelty. It's not, you know, something you need, but I think it adds a lot of character to these games, and, you know, it makes you develop more of a physical attachment to them because, you know, you have these cool things that you can have up on a shelf that you wouldn't digitally. It'd just be icons on your fucking homepage or whatever.
This is a standard copy of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. It retailed for $50 when it came out. And this comes with the game, as you can see. I'm playing it right now. I'm not connected to the internet. I don't have to download anything or have any licenses renewed. Not only does this come with the actual game itself, but it comes with a poster, a manual, and the game case. And it really just goes to show the diminishing returns that we're getting every year with these video games. GTA 6 is $80, and we don't get any of this. We don't own the actual game, we don't get a case, we don't get a poster, we don't even get a manual.
But all these things that I've just told you, they are all cosmetic. As much as, you know, people might appreciate them or love them and have a fondness for them, they are all material things and we can live without them. The main reason why so many people are pissed at this, and they are pissed, trust me, is because of all the concerns with ownership, the game market, and game pricing and things of that nature. A lot of people want to argue, oh, making physical discs just isn't financially viable for Sony anymore. Sony wants you to think that too. They keep citing this statistic that over 85% of their game sales were made digitally, but this statistic is actually incredibly disingenuous because if you look at what the actual numbers say, in those numbers, Sony's also including games that are only available digitally, like Apex Legends or Fortnite. I mean, Fortnite is available physically, but it's like $1,000. Sony includes games that are only available digitally, and there are thousands upon thousands of digital-only games that are available on the storefront. Of course, they're going to be more sold than physically. There's a leak that had something to do with Insomniac Games. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but it was a few years ago, and it revealed the statistics between certain games, how much they sold physically versus how much they sold digitally. And when it came to a lot of Sony first-party video games like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart or Spider-Man, God of War, things like that, a lot of those games sold significantly more physically than they did digitally. So Sony coming out here trying to make it seem like they just make absolutely no money from physical sales is just incredibly weird and deceptive, and it's just shady business practice. And it's pretty fucking obvious at this point that Sony is really just trying to kind of nudge themselves into this digital-only ecosystem. And it's because when it comes to a corporation like Sony that sells, you know, this digital art medium, it's in their best interest for them to have as much control over your purchases as possible. And something a lot of people tend to forget about these games is that they are effectively art. These are stories with messages, people, and real love and effort put into them. And PlayStation, being a medium for this art, it's also in their interest to make sure that the people viewing this art and experiencing this art are happy. A good way you can get people to realize kind of how ridiculous this move is by liking it to if a different company that manages a different art medium were to do the same thing. Like, let's say like Barnes & Noble announced one day, oh, we're closing all of our bookstores and we're just going to be an audiobook service. We're just going to be an app where you can download all your books. And yeah, you have them, but you just won't have them physically because it's not really that profitable for us. Or like if you bought like a piece of fine art, like you bought a piece of fine art with your own money, and instead of having it, owning it, and being able to hang it up on your wall, it was just like a link that you could click on to view like the art, and only you had that link. So ultimately, what can we do about this? Is there anything that we as gamers and consumers can do to change this? Probably not a ton, because Sony already has spent millions of dollars on repurposing their disc making factories into producing other things. You can let your voice be heard, because as much of a corporation Sony is, ultimately what their customers want and, you know, say to them does matter to an extent. So cancel your PlayStation Plus membership. Don't buy a PS6. Your next game that you have, try and purchase it physically. And ultimately do whatever you can to let Sony that this is something that you do not want. The more we cry, the more we complain, and the less we give Sony money, the more that we are closer to them walking this back. Sony is a massive company. PlayStation and gaming is a huge industry. So if our ownership is at risk for these video games, it won't be long before we see it go away with something, like I said, like books or art or any other medium, movies, DVDs. So even if you don't personally play physical games, this affects you directly. It affects the market, and it will affect other things in the future. So yeah, you know, sad day for gaming, sad day for collectors and people who just enjoy getting their games physically. And you know, for as long as Sony is you know, gonna roll with this decision, I will not be buying a PS6, and I won't be buying PS Plus. I don't even think I had PS Plus. I don't even use the internet to play my games. And it just makes no sense, you know, if I don't have the option to own my games physically on PlayStation 6, like 90% of the games that release on PS6 will eventually come out on PC, so I might as well just play them on PC. You know, rumors are saying that the PS6 is going to be, you know, $1,000 or more, so there's just no point in not buying a PC. A PlayStation 6 will essentially just be a gimped PC that just doesn't have any of the conveniences or abilities of a PC. It can just only play games. And on PC, you know, it's all digital, but those storefronts are a lot more consumer friendly and a lot more reputable than, you know, Sony, who has, you know, a history of taking away and being weird with their customers' media. So yeah, basically just kind of fuck Sony for now, and it might be over. It might really be over for gaming. You know, I'm gonna do what I can, but you know, it's bad, man. Fuck you guys.